right, I get to introduce the speaker today, and it is Jeff McIntyre. Jeff has joined the chapel on April 15th, 2018, and he is an active chapel member and a supporter of this church. He is a retired military, former IT director of Bionetics Corporation, former business owner and substance abuse counselor. He is currently employed at the Master Center for Addiction Medicine, working primarily with people addicted to heroin and other opiates. He is married to Pam McIntyre, currently a chapel member, board member, and a retired English teacher. They have 2 children, Russell, who is a business consultant for Deloitte, and Emma, who currently works as a solutions engineer for Oracle Corporation. And they also have, I do believe it's a female, a granddaughter. That's pretty soon. So I just wanted to add that because I remember seeing that beautiful picture of that little baby. So Jeff perceives his life purpose to be inspiring and raising the expansiveness of human consciousness and the elimination of unnecessary human suffering. Jeff believes that the freedom is best and surest path to human advancements, and says freedom is a manifestation of the highest level of consciousness. Dependency is a manifestation of the lowest level of consciousness. So with that, my hat's off to him. We need more like him in this world. So I'm going to hand it over to Jeff to give us some of his wisdom and his knowledge. So Jeff, it's your turn.
Thank you. Yeah, you can't have too many Jeffs around. All right, well, good morning, everyone. And today actually I was going to be talking about kind of the balance between the material consciousness and spiritual consciousness, that kind of duality. I am going to be talking a little bit about Mother's Day and the experience of being a parent, but this kind of came to mind. Years ago, and I'm talking probably 40 years ago at least, I read an article by an American Indian named what was his name? I think they called him Chief George or something. But anyway, the article was called Walking in Two Worlds, and it was about walking in the material world and simultaneously walking in the spiritual world, and having that kind of consciousness where you're conscious of both. And that's kind of what this grew out of. But I am going to start because it is Mother's Day, and I'm going to be talking about how we develop these places in consciousness and what changes as we go through life. But it all begins, okay? Ideally, it begins with an act of unity between 2 physical and spiritual beings, a mother and a father. Men and women are 2 halves of a whole, which results, really that just results from life's longing from life, for life. But through the process of pregnancy and birth, we get to experience, through participation, the creation of new life. And it's really, really hard to describe the experience. The experience of that unity continues on, especially between mother and child, through the entire lives of the people involved. It's interesting. I have a client right now who's 7 months pregnant, and her baby reacts to her voice, her husband's voice. She can rub her belly and the baby reacts to her and it will follow her hand. It's really amazing. So that process has already begun, and it's really just astounding. And like I said, it's really hard to describe, except for those people who have been through it. So what happens immediately is kind of we become I was really talking about balance, but we really kind of, when we have a baby come into our lives, we seemingly get out of balance because our baby is born and it becomes the center of our consciousness. My son was just we do have I think she's 4 months now, a 4-month-old grandchild. But my son was telling me, he wakes up in the morning and he is anticipating and saying, can't wait to get down and change a diaper and, look at those little fingers and all, babies are just so fascinating. But if it's your baby, it's even more fascinating and more beautiful, of course. But the way it changes our consciousness, and this baby becomes the center of everything in our lives. And so it kind of puts us out of balance. However, the way I view balance is that there's times to be, there's times to be really focused, like this example, really focused on that baby. And nothing else is more important to that. And that's the balance you should strike in that moment. There are other times when spiritual consciousness should dominate your life. For the baby, okay, being born or coming into human existence is a forgetting and a going to sleep. Okay? Because you have this spiritual being, we're spiritual beings before we enter this body, we're spiritual beings after we leave this body. But you have this spiritual being who comes into a human body and literally loses consciousness of their true nature. And everything becomes centered around the needs and desires of their physical body. Okay? No one is more self-centered than a newborn baby. It's all about, if I'm uncomfortable, I cry. If I have gas, I cry. If I'm hungry, I cry. So the baby learns to scream and the mother comes and fulfills its needs. It's all about that baby and that body and fulfilling the needs of that physical body. So from this place, and so it's that place in consciousness that we begin life as a human being. Okay. And anybody who's heard me teach has probably heard me describe my experience of spiritual growth, which my experience of spiritual growth is that spiritual growth is growth from a self-centered, small, selfish mentality to a more expansive, inclusive, unified consciousness. Okay. And this is where it begins. Okay. It begins with this extremely self-centered, extremely physically conscious. Okay, the consciousness of a baby is really based in the material world, and so that's where we begin. So within a few months, maybe even a few weeks, maybe immediately, the baby becomes aware of its mother. Okay, as a source of comfort and a source of everything, really. So that's the first expansion from this extraordinarily self-centered thing to the baby and its mother, and then probably its father is probably the next one to come into it. If there are brothers and sisters in the house, then those may be, or dogs or cats or whatever, those may become part of its initial expansion of consciousness. And so as we move on through life, you get to be 3 or 4 years old. If the kid goes to daycare, then they become part of that group of children, and that's the next level of expansion, because now they're actually part of a community. When they get old enough to go to school, then they're part of a class, a grade, a school, etc. They may even have a group of friends in the neighborhood. So you have this group of neighborhood friends. So the sense of community begins to grow. and this kind of continues, adding things as you move up through middle school and high school, and you may be on sports teams, you may be on, you may be a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout or whatever. But these communities grow and grow and grow, and the person's sense of self grows and grows and grows with that, as we become parts of things bigger than ourselves. Okay, now there is a trap that comes along with our physical minds. We can, our physical minds kind of lie to us. Okay, they tell us that this is all there is. Okay, and when material things is all there is, because our emotional life, our drama, our attachments, our sorrow, our happiness, our grief, joy, etc., are all manifestations of our physical nature. So and if that's all there is, then all of a sudden, if I only get money, then everything will be well. If I only get this girl or this guy, all will be well. If I only win this award, on and on and on. It's just one thing after another, feeding this very limited way of judgment. So and also, there is, judgment comes in with all these new communities and groups of people. Judgment comes in now in spirit, in our spiritual. I haven't really talked about our spiritual side that much for yet. In our spiritual side, there is no judgment because there is no separation. Judgment always comes from comparing material attributes, possessions, opinions, social status, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're lower than me because you belong to this group and I belong to this group, kind of thing. That's kind of the root of judgment. And judgment is, absolutely based in the material realm. Yeah, and that judgment, that those kind of the kind of mentality that this is all there is can really be a huge barrier to spiritual growth. So I obviously, when I'm talking about spiritual growth, I'm talking about expansion. And I'm talking about expansion of human consciousness. This is the consciousness that we create when we become a human being. Okay. And the goal of this process is what I'm going to call perfected human consciousness. But what perfected human consciousness, what I mean is that we expand and we expand and we expand, and sometimes through prayer, meditation, study, service, all these other things, all these other tools we have, our human consciousness eventually, and everyone, all of us human beings, regardless of whether we believe in religion or God or any other stuff, we all have this sense of, and actually philosophers sometimes call it ontological perception, which is just the sense of being. It's the kind of sense that there's more within us than we're actually aware of. So this we all have this kind of sense of of our spiritual nature, of our true nature as perfectly created spiritual beings. So we have that kind of drawing us out and drawing us forward. It's always moving towards unity. It's always moving towards expansion and acceptance. Some people call this our higher and lower minds, our human consciousness being our lower mind and the spiritual consciousness being our higher mind. So perfected human consciousness would be human consciousness that has been expanded and quieted to a point where it can unify with our spiritual consciousness. Now, obviously, spiritual consciousness really permeates everything. So we're never actually separated from it, but we're often unaware of it, and that's kind of the divide that we have to bridge. And you know, Paul in the Bible wrote about the mind of Christ. The mind of Christ is kind of the bridge between the lower and higher mind, or our physical self and our spiritual self. And you know, and Paul, my favorite passage in the Bible is in Romans 12, which is be not conformed to this world, but transformed by the renewing of your mind. And you know, we literally can transcend our physical life, physical limitations, you might say, simply by accepting and welcoming our own spiritual nature. And it will change the way we think. It'll change the way we perceive the world. It'll, you know, a lot of our fears disappear, because most of our fears are based on our little physical self and death and things like that, which don't really exist in the spiritual realm. So if you recognize yourself as a spiritual being, then sort of death loses its sting. So the point here is that we progress through life, through human life. We gain awareness of who and what we truly are, which is spirit. You know, the idea that, and this goes back to judgment, I guess, but the idea that some of us are more spiritual than others is a mistake. Not only does spiritual consciousness, not only does the consciousness of God exist within all of us, but it also exists in the smallest subatomic particle and the grandest galaxy. So like I said, it's just a mistake to think that some people are more spiritual than others. We are all 100% spirit. We are all in a state of transition. All of us human beings here in the physical realm are all in a state of transition and expansion to the unity of human consciousness and spiritual consciousness. And this is simply a change of awareness. Oh man, I need to speed up here. Okay, well, I can move on. So to expand and perfect human consciousness is the point. To expand to the point where we are one spirit and recognize that and live our lives from that. So our expression within life is no longer that you know, well, our expression of life is simply an expression of who and what we really are, which is spiritual consciousness. Fully human, fully spiritual in all of our expressions, in our words, in our thoughts, and in our actions. Thank you very much.